Auxiliary Security Manager.
That's not like,
Also got the bike.
that's not like.
Okay.
I just
That actually, let me go ask Chris. He's gonna do the one. Hey, so Aux Data 2 stuff.
Okay.
You know, for the fast, the whatchamacallit team that meets, what's it called? The CAPT. Do we need to, they were looking to see if there's a way to search in Aux Data 2 for Commodore,
got,
so boom, we pop up on the list. Is that an easy thing that we can do?
Oh, I'm sure we can make a report for that.
I can share with you what I have. I have 179 names of what we think we know.
But it should be able to, you should be able to say Commodore's
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably over there too. Hey, Steve. Hey, Steve. That mic in front of you is live. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I wasn't coming until Friday, but. She's only there for that day.
Hey.
That's right. Okay. Okay, good. I'll have to figure that out. So. Yes.
But I just want to give you a heads up.
All right. Thank you so much, Commodore. Sure. That's okay. Yeah, but why wouldn't you say that? You know, I'll probably have it on the floor.
When?
And hey, Steve, you know.
Okay. Where we going?
And we have seven. I had seven.
We all go?
7 people in BSX.
All right.
We're about a minute 34 seconds past. We want to go ahead and get started. All right. That's the way I want to start off the session, with a clapping before I start getting peppered with questions here. So, yeah, I was gonna say, is that? But in all honesty, thank you, Terry, for making sure that we were the last thing that's holding you between here and the bar or the social that we have coming up. So I'm hoping that the issues we have are going to be real issues here, as we can talk about. But anyways, we'll start off here with just so you know, this is streaming here. So. And I was going to go ahead and start off just kind of giving an overview for those that are new, don't know the BSX division as well up at headquarters. So within BSX up at headquarters, we actually have two divisions. We have BSX 1 and BSX 2. BSX 2 is comprised of our recreational boating safety program. We have 3 different branches that are within that, and they're all led by Mr. Vern Gifford. The 3 branches that we have are product assurance, so that's just making sure that the boat manufacturers are producing what they're supposed to be doing, quality products, and are not defective, in aligning with Coast Guard rules, regulations, and policies. Then we have our program analyst group, which they work a lot with the states, with whether it be NASBLA or any of that, making sure that they are complying with guidelines for that they're supposed to be with some of our grant money that we get, because all the states, as you know, get grants. We have about $130 million in grants that we have. 10 million, of course, as you all know, because the Coast Guard Auxiliary can apply for it. About 10 million that go to the nonprofit organizations. So then that goes to the 3rd branch of the VSX2. Is the grants regulation. And Pablo Aborsi, I don't think he's here today, but both Pablo and Tom Dardis was here during the Recreational Boating Safety Forum. I don't know, Commodore Lauer, I think they were part of that, but they've had a since depart for another event, I believe, back in DC. So that's pretty much the BSX 2 side, so I kind of oversee both BSX 2 and BSX 1. So then that brings us to the BSX 1 side, which is the Director of Auxiliary here, and our staff here to support you. So as you can see, we normally have, we have 7 folks up here on stage that are made up of BSX 1. I will say that there is an 8th billet. that is our training coordinator, which we just went through all of the hiring processes, the interviews, working with HR. And like I said this morning at the committee of the whole, I wish I could mention their name. However, HR told me I cannot do that until they complete a certain portion of the onboarding process. But we're expecting to get a certain portion of the onboarding process. But we're expecting to get them here mid-September, which is going to be a huge lift, which the auxiliary, as you talk about stepping up, they stepped up to help us in the training portion of that billet there. We had Commodore Zinnard, Jen Stack, and then also within BSX1, Lieutenant Booth and Wine Wentober took a lot of their regular duties to help out with this training program. And of course, Mr. Minatolo, but I know that he never would want to take credit for any of that. So, so that's why I'm sure he's turning blush right under there. We're getting a round of applause there because he's never going to take the credit. And I know for a fact he is blushing under that mask. So, anyways, that's the training piece. We also are looking to get another RP, Oxdata 2. If you remember, Master Chief O'Connell, who has done an amazing job. He has since retired, but Oxdata 2 was really, that was a full-time job for him. Master Chief Park is doing a lot of that same work, but we really need to get another billet for that. We put an RP, so an RP, that's request for proposal, I believe, that through headquarters to get it in our budget to have another assigned billet. Will be an Oxdata 2. Unfortunately, that got pushed to the wayside last year. We're submitting again for it this year, and that's one of the things, as you mentioned, how NACO goes to the LCs. That's one of the things that's kind of starting to slowly rise to the top, where I can get the assistance of NACO, maybe mentioning to the Commandant or DCO or something of what we can best support the auxiliary and BSX. So anyways, those two bills. Now I'm going to just introduce everyone here up on stage. So we'll go from, let's see, from your side, left to right here, starting off with Mr. Zig Wilson. He's our finance. Most of you have worked with that, whether it's purchasing things from office supplies. I know we had some issues with getting it here. I know Dee, I owe an apology to Dee for that, but those type of things, we're working in our office. He's dealing, of course, with FSMS too, so I'm sure he can tell you the headaches he's had to deal with as well in that. Moving over to Lieutenant Chris Booth. He's one of our administrative assistants who's pretty much, he does a lot in BSX1. And I know most of you with all the programs, whether it be Oxdata 2, even if back just before, I think Commodore Lauer had a question about Oxdata 2, and I was like, oh, Chris, I know you think you're the right person, and Chris was able to take care of that right off the plate there. So most of you worked with Chris. And of course, you know, Mr. Steve Minatolo. Oh, there's even, you get another round of applause, Steve, there. So he's the man, as NACO refers to him, the man behind the curtain. He's been here for so long, but knows everything about the auxiliary. I don't know how many questions I'll pop up. I was like, man, has this ever happened? And Steve will turn around and be like, oh, well, sir, that happened in 1972 on September 15th, this particular thing, and starts just citing things and things like, God. So anyways, as you all know, tremendous asset here for the for BSX1 staff. Then we have Commander Brad Winans, another fellow aviator, so don't worry, don't shoot us yet, because I know that. Oh, wait, there you go. I hear the clapping for that. So don't worry, I'll get to your prevention pin here in a second there, Steve. So Brad's second in from 7-Eleven's already hitting the deck running here with us. You know, I think he's already been down on the southwest border, gotten to witness the dedication that our auxiliaries have performed down there. And like I said, I can't speak enough about the southwest border. But then again, once again, I don't have my notes with me, so I'm getting sidetracked here. So anyways, Brad Wines just checking in. He's been here for now about 2 months now. So then moving on my left side there, we call him the Steve Squared course, but Steve Keel, he's our security administrator. There's another round of applause there. So most of you probably know Steve has not only helped with all of our the security things, but you might notice he's the one that does all of the COVID-19 restrictions and back and forth. And I know that has been a headache, and I still can't believe he's got hair on his head because of the amount of stuff we would go through. No kidding, we'd go through. He'd be like, "All right, Cap, I got this all ready. Got legal, you know, all the other concurrent clearances. We're ready to go." I was like, "All right, let's get this thing pushed out." We go and wait to get it pushed out, and then CDC guidelines change. Steve then sends an email and is like, guess what, Captain? We get to start from scratch again. So we go on that. So he's been dealing with that all year, just did a tremendous job for that. So, okay, and then moving on to Master Chief Park. He's, oh, there's a hand. Look, everyone's now. So Master Chief Park has coming into our policies for operations, and he stepped right into as a carterman and boat guy. He comes in, starts doing aviation policy, and is actually teaching me on the aviation policy, which I probably should know, which that probably is telling you something about me. But anyways, so and another tremendous asset here to the BSX team, and then of course Wyan-Wantober. So, as many of you know, there's a lot of issues with FSMS, you name it, and guess every time I hear that, usually Wyan-Wantober's the one that's not only showing BSX, showing the auxiliary, but showing other people and providing training to people in 5P. So, tremendous asset. I can't say enough. Can't say enough about this entire staff right here. So if I could just get a round of applause for them, they do amazing work. And I will just notice here, if you look, there's 3 people that have been here, had been to NACONs here. Of course, that's the Steve Squared that I like to always call him, and Zig. But this is our first NACON because we haven't had it in 3 years with Lieutenant Booth, Commander Winans, myself, Master Chief Park, and Wyan-Wantober. So with that, I know we're going to open up some questions here. There was some things I just wanted to address before. I kind of wanted to give like a quick picture what we're dealing with at headquarters on a daily basis. And in addition to, so as you see, our staff is not as big as maybe it used to be. And I don't think, hold on, so let me find something real quick. Sorry, I should have came prepared with this, but so here's our list of priorities that we have within the office. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages here of our list of priorities that we are all constantly working on. A lot of these are manual revisions that haven't been updated for 10, 15 years. All I'm asking is your patience as we go through this and try to get these. One thing that we are changing up is normally NACO and VNACO, we go through this list of priorities here on a quarterly basis when they come up to the LC. We are going to start going with NEXCOM, providing this to NEXCOM to make sure we're not missing any of the projects that I've heard a couple times now die on the vine. We want to make sure that your voice is heard and at least know if it's a policy that we can't support and it's off the list. Or if it is, that we're going to get to it at some point. So in addition to this list right here, just to kind of put it in perspective, and I know I said it to all the DCOs, I believe yesterday morning, that over the past 2 months, we've had 5 or 6 congressionals at headquarters for this staff to do. Now, for those of you who don't know, congressionals are when an issue comes up and it comes down from Congress, either senator, congressman, and we have to answer from BSX. We usually have a timeline on that. Sometimes we're lucky and it's a week or 2 weeks, and then sometimes we're not lucky. It comes out on a Wednesday evening and we need it by Thursday close of business. So that has happened a couple of times. So while we are all working on this right here, we have to put this aside and answer those questions. So not making excuses, just wanted to kind of give you an idea of the realm of the work that we are constantly battling at headquarters. So without further ado, I know took 11 minutes of your time here. I want to open this up to questions that you all have for myself and the team. Use your aviator voice, right?
Would there be, is it possible to establish a mechanism, perhaps through the good offices of BSX, to spread the word about the auxiliary to separating enlisted and commissioned personnel?
Okay. I heard Lieutenant Booth is my wealth of knowledge on this subject. Would you be able to, and you come to the podium here if you'd like.
Oh, I don't want to, no, I'll sit down right here. Yes, sir, we've just put together a pamphlet in conjunction with a directorate personnel that knocked it out of the park and put together a wonderful brochure that we're going to disseminate to, well, Mr. Minatolo, always prepared, has a copy. We're going to disseminate that to all the, what used to be TAPS classes of all the separating and retiring Coast Guard members to offer them, an awareness of, hey, you may be separating from the Coast Guard, but you can utilize your talents in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. So that'll be going forward electronically and hard copy as well.
Will the recording secretary please mark that as a home run?
One thing to add to that too, and I believe, where is Commodore Mullally? Where I thought, okay, right there. I know we talked at N-Train. One of the things that we're trying to target too, because I've got a lot of friends that have separated from the Coast Guard, and I know when they're in the process of separating, the last thing they want to do is do anything Coast Guard. They've got so much other stuff that they're, so that tight 6-month window when we give them that pamphlet, that probably is the last thing on their mind. Some may pick it up and we can capitalize on it. So when we were looking at it at NextCon, at one of our NextCon meetings at N-Train, we said, hey, let's look at the long blue line, and it's for all the retirees that are out there, that, hey, you retire after a year, but that after a year you miss that camaraderie. Because I know for a fact, I've gone to, doing just some of the site visits, whether ride-alongs and doing patrols, the number one thing that I hear, the auxiliaries that are on, that have been in the Coast Guard and they've gotten back to the Coast Guard Auxiliary, is the camaraderie. They said it was great the first year, but then after the first year, they were like, I miss that camaraderie. And, that's something that the Coast Guard is huge on, the auxiliary is huge on. It's that camaraderie, going on a boat, going on a mission, doing whatever. And so I think with that, the long blue line, Commodore Mullally, I forget how many, we've got at least 1 or 2 advertisements that I've seen so far in the long blue line for that. And I think even, Lieutenant Booth, you had an article, I think, that was in there too as well, the most recent one, I think.
Yes, sir, there was an article in there, but there's also going to be they're going to do an auxiliary spotlight in future editions as well. So that's a pretty neat initiative. We just have to flesh that out to build that up to make sure that that's included in every issue.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually, and I actually bring that out. So that's one thing that at N-Train, when the Commandant sat us around, sat next come around, said, okay, what can I do for you? We talk about recruiting, retention, how can you do that? And so now that's why we have our own space on My Coast Guard. And it's interesting what happens when you have the ear of the Commandant, and then all of a sudden those officers that were not talking to you start talking to you and getting information, and it goes right up on, so. All right, who else?
Good afternoon, Captain. BSX. Questions regarding congressionals. Is there any, let's call it a recourse for those members who file a congressional without first going up the chain, or it seems to be determined like to be a frivolous congressional?
So it's funny you said that. We actually were discussing that at NextCom and said, oh, we'll go tell the, no, if you do that, it will probably, if you come down on that person that did this, it's probably going to make the situation worse. So as always, try to work at in the chain of leadership to take care of those issues and resolve them. So those congressionals, we understand though that sometimes you cannot solve that, and hence why we get those congressionals. So
I'd just like to add, sir, it's not all that subject line when we get a congressional. It can be anything under the sun related to boating safety or auxiliary, or somebody heard something during a conversation, so that congressperson contacts our congressional affairs personnel, asks a question, and then it trickles down to us. So we get many congressional inquiries for a number of situations or subjects.
all right, we got 2 questions. I know that there's got to be some more flowing in here.
I understand there's an initiative underway to have a standalone citizenship verifier qualification. And if the scuttlebutt is correct, is there a target date on when that might be out?
I believe that, is that one of, that's the chapter 3, correct, or is that?
You want that, Steve?
No, go ahead, take first crack at it, and I'll pile on.
Yeah, as far as the date, we have to get while we're working on this SOP or guide or whatever we're gonna call it, we have to get concurrently the All-Coast Commandant notice out. So right now, that's in the office being reviewed. We still have to go through concurrent clearance in the building, legal, privacy office, places like that. And then we have to go through the sequential clearance, which goes up the chain of command, 5PC, 5P, and then 5P can sign off on it. While we're doing that, we're working on this guide. So everything's kind of timed together. So depending on what's going on, if we get another hit of COVID, that takes a lot of time away from me to do that. And now we got this monkeypox thing coming, who knows? Our target date was before NACON. Obviously we didn't meet that, so maybe September, October, hopefully by the end of the year is the best I can say.
And I don't have my glasses here, Steve, help me out. Is that that's the one you're talking about, right? See, that's right, you have them at the ready, I gotta go. Is that the one?
No, that's chapter 3. It will be lawful permanent
There's my
resident.
bag.
I think it's on the second page. Yeah, so it is middle of October, I think is where we had that, so.
If I could pile on to that one a little bit more, it's the importance of the citizenship verifier competency is being largely driven by our closing in on the policies for the enrollment of lawful permitted aliens, residents into the country, and the authorization for them to be enrolled into the auxiliary. Citizenship verifier is going to have to train to do things like validate a green card, okay? Different type of documentations that they'll be looking for, and being able to confirm and, saying okay particularly for LPRs, lawfully permitted residents. So if it's been important up to now, it's going to become more important, and this guide that's coming out is going to provide the training and the task and the qualifications that are needed to do it properly and up to speed, okay? And again, we're close. We're on the threshold of the policies for that. They're coming, and just heads up, because that's an entirely new game when it comes to enrollees for the auxiliary, and basically things to watch out for and to be aware of in bringing LPRs on board.
And so with that list too, that I mentioned the training billet that's coming with that person. When that person fills that billet, it allows us to some of our folks to actually freely get on these projects. So you're going to see some of these hopefully starting to accelerate. Then hopefully we get the Aux Data 2 billet, which then can take Master Chief away and help with getting more of the policy letters and getting back to the operation thing. Because right now we're juggling a bunch. So.
Two really quick, easy questions.
I hope so. I hope it's a big softball. So, although I'm horrible at softball, so let's see what happens.
One is there a better way we can describe to our members when and when they're not covered, when they're applied orders associated with the injury or something such as that? Like for example, a few years back we had somebody that was hit by by a bus, actually walking from their car to a flotilla meeting, and there was a question whether that was going to be covered or not covered and things, but just some maybe a little more clearer guide for our members, because I think it's just been a little squeegee, I think, to the members on when is it that they're covered and when they are not. So that was the first one. Second one is
okay, go ahead.
Second, with our expanded role inside the Coast Guard, we do more things. Is there any thought to looking to get? I mean, I know funding is always tight, but more funding for C schools and for us to be able to do more training to allow us to be able to be better prepared for the unknown upcoming things that we have going on.
All right, so the second question I'll probably be able to answer, but the first question, when it gets down to the specifics of whether they're covered for duty, I know they're assigned to, oh, that's great. We got a lawyer in the room that can help me out. That's
Lawyer in your corner.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Captain, BSX staff. There is a DSOLP in every district who is quite familiar with the rules for the coverage when the Federal Tort Claims Act is available for third-party liability issues, where the Federal Employee Protection Act might come in to assist injured auxiliaries who are injured while assigned to duty. So I would refer any of those questions to your DSOLP, and we have in place a system by which the DSOLP, if he or she's not familiar with the process, although I think most are, and we have monthly conferences to discuss exactly those kinds of things, that question can be pushed up through the DSOLP, through the attorneys, and they can be answered. So we do have the assets and the folks who can answer those questions. Obviously, sir, we understand your staff is far too busy to be handling questions like that, and we're available to do that. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Commodore Cream, because I know getting in the nuts and bolts of it, I would not be able to answer that specific question on the clarity of that.
Well, can I say, just 3 essential elements, always bear in mind, right, when it comes to assignment to duty. The proper order issuing authority, they're performing an authorized activity, and they're doing it within the scope of employment. They're not acting grossly negligent kind of a thing. If you just abide by those for starters, it becomes pretty clear if you're going to be covered or not.
And now moving on to your, did that answer your first question there? So as best as I can there. So the second question, as far as training, that's a good thing we talk about in the DCOs, I think yesterday about that. And actually, myself and Commander Winans, NACO and VNACO had a discussion last night at dinner regarding that too, as we talk about the roles that the auxiliary keeps expanding out. What are those additional training opportunities that we could potentially ask for? I know I mentioned yesterday about how we had some safety training, because as you know, that's going to be VNACO's, one of his initiatives, we talk about it was safety. So, we have, I think, a good 15-minute discussion, 15, 20 minutes, is that right there, Bob, regarding the safety tomorrow at OPCOM, I believe. So, from that, we have 1 or 2 auxiliary training billets to go to, I believe it's AMARC, which is a course of active duty course there. So the more that we can see what training you need, that's one thing we talked about for the new training officer that comes in is, hey, okay, here, let's get you up to speed on your job. Then let's see what else, if there's anything possible that we can keep going to give you the training that then in the end, as Commodore Merriman had announced today about the return on investment, because I mean, that's a huge investment if we can put that training up front. I think it was like a $7 or $8, went up almost I want to say $1. Don't quote me on it right now because I don't have the report on it. But that is definitely something that we have to look at. And it's one thing we will be looking at. I can't promise you any dates or anything on that, or what we can do. But I will ask you, kind of turn the question around too, is what specific training do you see that you could get from active duty that could help you perform roles for roles in the Coast Guard, if that makes sense. So have to be a partnership with both of us in trying to think out where we could, which training or what training you would need for that, if that makes sense.
Captain Glendye, Kathy Slabaugh, Commodore 9th Central Region. My question has to do with the 7101 form, and it's a requirement to fill that out before a member does something outside their home. We recently, as of maybe 6-8 weeks ago, were able to find out from our DIRAUX office who had turned one of those forms in and who had not, because apparently there is a box in Aux data that can track whether or not someone had turned that in. But what came of that was that only about 20% of our active members had actually turned in that form. My concern is how to deal with those members, and of course we pushed it back down the chain to get people to realize they needed to turn that form in. But my concern is about an unmonitored mandate to have that form, and that we don't really have the tools to enforce that, since it's going directly from the member to the DIRAUX office. I don't know if there's a trigger that could be put in for activities not being able to be logged, or how we can know who doesn't have that, and then how to proceed with counseling, discipline, et cetera, et cetera.
So one thing is that, so the form that I think you're getting next, I don't have the forms memorized, but I think that's the form regarding the attestation, is that auxiliary, yes, high risk form. So thank you, see, Steve's got it right up to the, see how great this staff is here? Before everything comes, they're prepared. But anyways, so getting back, so first off, one thing I want to be clear with our auxiliary, with our, COVID vaccination requirement, it is not a requirement to be vaccinated to be in the auxiliary. That's first case point. And if you've noticed, I don't know if you've heard, active duty actually just recently started discharging active duty folks that do not have their codes. So that's how serious the Coast Guard is taking that, and how serious DOD is it. Now, for auxiliarists, because it falls into a different category, so to speak, there is, as you saw the recent version that came out, we have the high, medium, low risk. And if you're vaccinated, you can go the high risk, but there's certain protocols. Medium and low, there's certain protocols. You have to do 72-hour testing and so forth like that. So, so with that said, to answer your question as far as AUX Data 2, right now we worked to have that capability that will check to see if we have this high risk form. DIRAUXs are supposed to be checking those forms before they're, issuing orders, and making sure that they're not going to send an auxiliarist in harm's way. So that's being divvied out at the DIRAUX level as far as that. I know we only have 20%, or maybe a low percent. We need to get those numbers of those forms up. That's one thing, I think in one of my remarks section, I've asked that we do that. So we have a Chief DIRAUX forum tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that's, if it already hasn't come up, it might have already come up about, collecting those forms. We're really harping on that to get that, because there may be another time where we start looking to say, okay, in AUX Data 2, how many of our folks are vaccinated? So, but it's been a huge leap for us to allow in-person activities for auxiliaries that are unvaccinated. We went back and forth. I think in NTRAN I had mentioned that we were trying to get either religious exemptions or medical exemptions or religious accommodations. However, there's no work for, we're already short-staffed as it is. They barely had enough to do the active duty, and then the same thing with civilians. We got pretty much put to the back and said, nope, that's not gonna happen. So luckily, Steve did a heck of a job trying to figure out a way, and the way he was actually commended by the entire COVID staff, how he has written that policy to allow even some in-person activity in low and medium areas. Because originally we were said, nope, not gonna happen. So does that answer your question? I know it was kind of going a little bit all over on the policy side, but I believe it's mostly that we just need to push the DIRAUXs to start collecting those forms for the AUX Data 2. And they're the ones that have to make sure that those, before they issue the orders, that if they're, depending on which area they're going to. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm missing anything on that or anything
no, sir,
to add.
I would just add, it actually says in here, where is it? If this updated form is not submitted, then any in-person assignment to duty will not be approved.
My concern is that we have people on the local level, where they're doing a local thing, not being deployed to the southwest border. But if they're doing something local, no one at the local level knows whether or not that form's been filled out.
So someone that's not on orders is what you're saying?
Well, if you're doing vessel exams, that's not a DIRAUX order to get that in plain sight.
Can I maybe say something that we're doing that might help on that? I'm Tiny Singer. I'm with District 13. What we did when this first came out with Reconstitution Phase 4 is that we got with DIRAUX same spreadsheet, we have all the forms come through a grouping that I have. We take the form and put it into the spreadsheet and then send that on to DIRAUX where they enter it into 82. Then I made available through our website where each one of our flotilla commanders and division commanders can sign on to the actual database. And they look at it and they can tell that individual has turned in their form. So consequently what's happened is the flotilla commanders at that level are now asking their members, you need to send in this form because I cannot let you come to a meeting or I cannot do this. We also at the same time put out a declaration concerning have to be vaccinated. I mean, if you're not vaccinated, that you have to take a test within 72 hours and everything else and have meetings with it. But we're actually doing a database, an actual spreadsheet on it. And then when DIRAUX gets it, we then have one person sends it to DIRAUX and either the OTO or the YM1 will take it, enter it, and put it into 82. But that way, all of our flotilla and division leadership know whether that person's vaccinated or not, because it was too much to put on one person at DIRAUX or even two people. It's just a suggestion, but that's the way we're doing it, and it works really good.
Mark Stone, Commodore 1 South. We took it one step further. We took the actual form. One of our people who knows computer stuff has a program. They put it online. Go to our website. Form is right there. Fill out the website online. Drops it into the spreadsheet. Nobody touches it. Password protected. DIRAUX gets the copy, emailed automatically, and anybody who needs it has access to that database. Nobody touches any paper.
Those are all great processes here, and I know another thing too, when we're at the headquarter national level, the one thing that I know being out in the field, I don't want to put everyone in a box. It has to be a certain process, because it's going to work each way at each different district. Whichever way you can work, that's the national policy, and that's that fine line of how much do we get into dictating, then we're getting too tactical on that, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Captain and BXS staff, especially BXS2. I just wanted to point something out as I'm viewing the Target the Future. And by the way, I am the district captain for Recreational Boating Safety District 14, Hawaii, Guam, Saipan. So about 6 months ago, we have an organization called Hawaii Ocean Safety Team, and they're very proactive in boating safety. They had developed a found paddlecraft sticker that actually has a QR code on it. It's about the size of a $50, not quite. Vastly different than the large orange stickers that we use now. You scan the QR code, and it opens up, and it's actually an entire database. This has already made it to BSX, I believe, through pretty much a D14 level right now. We're trying to get exposure. The sticker is actually being trialed at places like West Marine on Oahu. It is the future. Basically, within that database, it can cover just about anything you want. We're trying to limit it, or recommending that it be limited to like email addresses. Obviously, we have personal identifiable information in there. This would go directly to Coast Guard. So if a surfboard, any type of paddlecraft were found floating, we're hopefully preventing a SAR search. We have an immediate way, Coast Guard would have an immediate way to contact. So I just wanted to point it out to you. We think it's at legal. I don't know if Mr. Minatello has seen it yet.
I was gonna say, I've seen it on BSX2. I'm trying to figure what I thought it was.
D14
Thank you. So that's what that is. I know on BSX2 side, there is a district, I want to say it's a D8 on the Coast Guard side, that there's the innovation, they've got some innovation funding for this potential project to do that, to see what's the next step of that and how much funding it's going to come with that. And I think to kind of go along with that, if we can get this kicked off and then we can kind of merge the two, but so I think that it's being, and I'll have to look back in my notes, I can get back to you on it, but I know that there is a commander, I want to say, we talked about this at the, you know the thing at headquarters they do, it's the innovation,
R&D.
it's a yeah, it's an R&D, it was on one of the R&D lists last fall, I remember going through, and getting a call if we get funding for it, so. I know it's being looked at, but as you know, it usually takes time for a pilot, and the innovation things, unfortunately, takes time, so you have to have a pilot program, collect the data and so forth like that. So I wish my BSX2 staff was here because they have both the pros and the cons for each, and I just don't have it off the top of my head right now. So,
Roger, and thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for the question. Oh.
Sir, I'd like to actually ask a question to you back about that, just personal interest. Sorry, hopefully we go down too much of a sidetrack. But speaking of the pros and cons, some of the things that I have heard about those QR codes is you know, what if it gets scraped? If it's a sticker, do they have to put it in a certain spot? If the people who found the kayak or whatever even know to look for this little QR code, if it's under the water line. Just many things like that I've heard. Does it last like a month and then the sun wears it out, or if it scrapes, you can't read the QR code? Is there any data that you know about just to answer any of those questions that come up?
Roger, and those are good points. The sticker itself could be put on the current found sticker, which has more visibility. But these are reasonably visible. They are completely waterproof. We've played with them, like scraping it with a cord or things like that. Eventually, they would have to be replaced. You know, a year, 2 years, you know, it's going to take some experimenting to see how long they really will hold up, but so far, so good. They've done a very good design job on the sticker itself and the sturdiness of the sticker. You know, you are correct. The size of the sticker, could be easily missed if a novice ran across it. You know, not one of us, not the gold side. So, good point, and it could be put on the larger orange sticker.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? We've got about a little under 19 minutes here left, so free shot on net here. So first, so as we're going on here, I just want to say thank you for, I know some of these questions we're kind of going around to maybe not have the correct answer, but I just want, first off, want to say thank you for these questions because it's challenging us to get better, and at the same token, just want to thank you for all that you do. Can't say that enough, so. I got some, oh, that's a good question. Is there, are there any, I know we've got some viewers online. Are there any online? Oh, no viewers, okay. Wait, this is.
How you doing? Paul Sala, Deputy Director B. Quick question for you. This is actually kind of a little bit of a shot out in the distance. I know as we've been doing a lot of more marine domain awareness missions, we've been doing a lot of missions out in District 11 South as we've started a new patrol looking for ponga boats and vessels coming ashore that may be transporting items that we don't want entering the country and bringing knowledge back. We've been given government vehicles to execute that mission. One of the questions that was brought to me by some of our members, since we had a plethora of pilots, but not a lot of aircraft and not a lot of vessels, because we're having a problem getting facilities in our district, was there ever any thought about having assets Coast Guard assets that would be utilized moving forward, similar like Civil Air Patrol has their own fleet of aircraft and vehicles.
I know what it basically boils down to as it comes to funding. There is some ways I was corrected at N-Train, not the aviation side, but I know on the facility side for the surface side, that there is a way that if there's a decommissioned boat, if the CHDIRAUX or whoever finds out about that decommissioned, or is getting ready to decommission that boat, if they coordinate with a property officer in advance, but it has to be like done out a year out. I believe Steve was the one that corrected me on that, that there's potentially a way to do that. At first I said no, but there is a way to do it, but you have to be proactive. You have to know where that vessel or where that asset is being decommissioned, know who the right people to talk to as far as the property officer to figure out the next steps. There is a process, and I know for a fact I got to go out on a, because it's been done, was it station, I can't remember, it was in your district there. We went down, it's actually, it used to be a Coast Guard asset, right? It was a Boston whaler, I think, that was 1607 on the Outer Banks. That's, which if you ever get a chance to do helo ops for 60 on that, it is awesome. So I highly encourage that. Anyways, Steve, was there more to add to that, or?
There's a way that when the Coast Guard's got property it declares excess, to marry up the interest of the auxiliary for that property with the Coast Guard's property management system to short circuit the normal process and get it to an auxiliary unit before it's open to the public, that kind of a thing. Boats are a special case. Boats are high demand assets, high demand property that don't normally go through that kind of process. I dare say some boats that are auxiliary operated are probably still Coast Guard owned. The hulls may have literally been transferred. They're still Coast Guard property, but maybe transferred to an auxiliary unit for use, manning, staffing, that kind of a thing. So that's not a good target for this kind of a process of marrying up with between an auxiliary interest and the Coast Guard's ownership of it. Other property, though, from I don't know, excess computers to screens to office equipment, that kind of a thing that might be excess to the Coast Guard, can be often married up easily if there's an auxiliary unit that's got the interest for it, can take care of it, and wants it, and avoid having it go open to the public, that kind of a thing. That's a process you've got to get your director involved with. They in turn end up calling our Coast Guard property manager in CG 84, I believe it is, and they make it work from there. But I got to tell you, things like certainly not airplanes, but boats of any type are just tough, to the point where I would say don't even bother, kind of a thing. There's a pecking order for agencies to bid on stuff, and boats hulls are very popular, and they don't lend themselves to this kind of process. That's the best I can tell you. But again, if it's Coast Guard property, again, it's still Coast Guard property, and they want to transfer it to a different unit. Sometimes boats get transferred from one unit to another. They can get transferred to an auxiliary unit, still on the Coast Guard's books. That doesn't happen too often, but that's possible. Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions before? I think we were. All right, well, thank you all for your time, and thanks for challenging us to get better here at BSX.